My name is Eleanor Hayes. I'm 34 years old, and for almost a decade I've lived with a secret that could destroy my marriage. I teach Year 3 at a primary school in a quiet town in northern England. My husband, Nathan, is 35 and works as a civil engineer. He is the kind of man who remembers birthdays, fixes broken shelves without being asked, and listens carefully before speaking. Everyone trusts him. The hardest thing to admit is that he trusted me, too. Before Nathan came into my life, I loved someone named Lucas Mercer. We met during my final year at university. Lucas was adventurous and unpredictable. He talked about opening a business, moving abroad, and living without plans. Being with him felt like standing in a storm. We spent 2 years dreaming about a future that never arrived. Our families disapproved of the relationship, but I believed love would be enough. Then Lucas began pulling away. He missed calls, canceled plans, and disappeared for days at a time. One morning, he was simply gone. His phone was disconnected, my emails bounced back, and no one seemed to know where he had gone. A few weeks later, I learned that I was pregnant. I sat on the bathroom floor with the test in my shaking hands and felt my world split in two. I was frightened, alone, and ashamed. I didn't know where Lucas was, and I didn't know if he would have wanted the child. So I buried the truth and tried to survive. That was when Nathan entered my life. We met through a family friend at a small dinner party. He was quiet, thoughtful, and patient. He brought me tea when I had a cold, remembered the stories I told him, and never pushed me to be anyone else. I should have told him everything then, but every day I waited made the confession harder. When Nathan asked me to marry him, I said yes. I convinced myself that I could build a good life on a terrible decision. I told him the baby was his. He believed me without hesitation. 8 months later, my son was born. We named him Oliver. Nathan held him against his chest and cried openly. "He's perfect," he whispered. "I can't believe he's ours." Watching him become a father was the happiest and most painful thing I had ever experienced. He learned how to change nappies, stayed awake through fevers, and carried Oliver around the house singing badly until he fell asleep. Every act of love made my secret heavier. As Oliver grew older, I noticed things that reminded me of Lucas: the dark hair, the crooked smile, the way he laughed with his whole face. Nathan only smiled and said, "He gets that from you." Sometimes I almost told the truth. Then Oliver would run into Nathan's arms after school, and fear would close my mouth again. Years passed. We became an ordinary family. We built blanket forts in the living room, burned pancakes on Sunday mornings, and argued about whose turn it was to wash the dishes. Nathan never doubted me. He loved Oliver with a devotion that filled every corner of our home. Then, one cold Saturday, everything changed. Oliver was playing in a school football tournament while Nathan and I cheered from the sidelines. He scored a goal, grinned at us, and then suddenly collapsed. I remember screaming his name. Nathan reached him first and held him while the coaches called an ambulance. At the hospital, Doctors rushed him away for tests and said he needed blood urgently. Nathan immediately offered to donate. He rolled up his sleeve without a second thought. An hour later, a doctor returned with a puzzled expression. "Mr. Hayes," he said carefully, "I need to ask a difficult question. Are you Oliver's biological father?" Nathan stared at him. The room went silent. I felt every lie I had told over the last 9 years rise up around me like a flood, and for the first time I knew there was nowhere left to hide. Nathan stared at the doctor for a long moment. Then he slowly turned toward me. I knew there was nowhere left to hide. After the doctor left, we sat alone in the waiting room. Rain tapped against the hospital windows while I finally told him the truth. I told him about Lucas, his sudden disappearance, the pregnancy, and the fear that had followed me for years. I admitted that when Nathan proposed, I was terrified of being alone and too ashamed to confess everything. Nathan listened without interrupting. When I finished, he asked quietly, "For 9 years, you let me believe Oliver was my biological son?" Tears filled my eyes. I was wrong. I should have trusted you enough to tell you the truth. He covered his face with his hands. "You took away my choice, Eleanor." Those words hurt because they were true. A nurse soon told us that Oliver was stable and recovering well. We walked into his room together. He looked tired, but when he saw us, he smiled. "Did I miss the rest of the match?" he asked. Nathan laughed softly through his tears. "You're worried about football after scaring us like that?" Oliver grinned. "I scored before I fainted. That should count for something." Nathan sat beside him and squeezed his hand. In that moment, I understood that no test could erase the years they had shared. After Oliver came home, Nathan and I had many difficult conversations. We argued, cried, and sat through long silences. One evening, he finally asked, "Did you ever really love me?" I answered honestly. "At first, I loved the safety you gave me. But somewhere between the sleepless nights, school concerts, family holidays, and ordinary mornings, I fell in love with you completely." Nathan looked down. "I'm still hurt. I may be hurt for a long time. But when I think of Oliver, I don't think about blood. I think about teaching him to ride a bike, helping with homework, and hearing him call me Dad." A few days later, Oliver found us sitting quietly in the kitchen. "Are you two okay?" he asked nervously. Nathan pulled him into a hug. "Listen to me, Ollie. Nothing will ever change this. I'm your dad, and I always will be." Oliver hugged him back so tightly that Nathan had to laugh. It has been a year since that night at the hospital. Our marriage isn't perfect, but it is honest. We still have difficult days, and rebuilding trust takes time. Yet every evening, when Nathan and Oliver argue about football while I mark school papers at the kitchen table, I know something important. Secrets nearly destroyed our family, but truth gave us a chance to save it. Nathan became a father the day he chose to love a little boy with his whole heart, and that is something no blood test can ever change.